I never imagined a simple doorbell could herald such chaos. It rang with an innocuous melody, yet the sound sent tremors through my peaceful afternoon like a distress signal. I peered through the window and my heart sank. Rowena and Elsie stood on my doorstep, armed with suitcases and sheepish grins. As I opened the door, Rowena swept me into an unwanted embrace. "Brinley, darling. Surprise! We'll be staying with you for a while." Elsie breezed past me, already making herself at home. "Thanks for having us, sis. You're a lifesaver." I forced a smile, my mind reeling. Carter emerged from the kitchen, his face mirroring my confusion. "Mom, Elsie, what's going on?" "Well, you see," Rowena began, "we're having a bit of work done on the house, and we'll need to stay somewhere for a few weeks." Carter's brow furrowed. "You didn't mention anything about renovations." "It was rather sudden," Rowena said with a dismissive wave. "But no need to fret, dear. We'll be out of your hair before you know it." Elsie plopped onto the couch, kicking off her shoes. "Yeah, just a temporary thing. You two lovebirds can handle us for a little while, right?" I shot Carter a pleading look, but he simply shrugged, seemingly accepting the situation. As Rowena and Elsie chattered about their living arrangements, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. My peaceful oasis had been infiltrated, and I had a gut instinct this was just the beginning of a very unwelcome disturbance. Rowena and Elsie wasted no time making themselves at home. And by at home, I mean trampling all over my personal space and boundaries. It started small, Elsie borrowing my makeup without asking, or Rowena snooping through my home office under the guise of curiosity. But soon, their intrusions grew more audacious. One morning, I discovered Elsie lounging in my favorite armchair, her bare feet propped up on my antique coffee table, a family heirloom from my grandmother. When I politely asked her to remove her feet, she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Relax, Bryn. It's just a table." The disrespect stung, but before I could respond, Rowena emerged from my office, rifling through a stack of my sketchbooks. "Rowena!" "Those are private," I protested, but she waved me off dismissively. "Oh, don't be so uptight, dear. I'm just admiring your work." I bit my tongue, recognizing the futility of arguing. As the days wore on, their audacity escalated. Elsie started borrowing my clothes without permission, leaving makeup stains and spills in their wake. Rowena treated my office like her own personal lounge, leaving coffee rings and crumbs scattered across my desk. The final straw came when I realized my high-end drawing tablet was missing. I tore through the house, searching every nook and cranny, but it was nowhere to be found. When I confronted Rowena and Elsie, they feigned innocence, suggesting I must have misplaced it. But deep down, I knew the truth. One of them had taken it, without a shred of respect or regard for my belongings or workspace. As if that wasn't enough, I later discovered that an essential project file had been mysteriously deleted from my computer. Hours of work, gone in an instant. I tried to remain calm, but my frustration was reaching a boiling point. When Carter returned home from work that evening, I wasted no time venting my grievances, but to my dismay, he simply shrugged it off, urging me to be more accommodating. "They're family, Bryn," he said, as if that excused their entitled behavior. "I'm sure it was just an accident." I wanted to scream. Didn't he see how disrespectful and invasive they were being? How could he dismiss my concerns so easily? As I lay in bed that night, seething with anger and resentment, a dark thought crept into my mind. If Carter wouldn't stand up for me, I would have to find a way to stand up for myself, no matter what it took. As if the constant invasions of privacy and disrespect for my belongings weren't enough, Rowena and Elsie managed to find a new way to stomp all over my heart. It started when I overheard Elsie bragging to her friends about her latest gig at a local bar. "Yeah, I've been playing this sweet vintage violin. Gives me such a cool, rustic vibe on stage." My blood ran cold. There was only one vintage violin she could be referring to. My late grandfather's treasured instrument, passed down through generations. The thought of Elsie carelessly lugging it around to seedy bars made me sick. I confronted her later that day, my voice trembling with anger. "Have you been using Grandpa's violin for your gigs?" Elsie had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Relax, Bryn. I'm just borrowing it." "Borrowing it? That violin is a priceless family heirloom. You can't just take it without asking." "Geez, calm down. It's not like it's made of gold or something." Her flippant attitude only fueled my rage. I stormed into the living room, where Rowena sat sipping tea, and demanded an explanation. "Did you know about this? Did you give her permission to take Grandpa's violin?" Rowena set down her cup, leveling me with an icy glare. "And what if I did? It's been gathering dust in the attic for years. At least Elsie is putting it to good use." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That violin was more than just an instrument. It was a cherished connection to my late grandfather, a man I deeply loved and respected, and they were treating it like a disposable toy. "Put it to good use?" I sputtered. "She's hauling it around to dive bars and God knows where else. It's going to get damaged or stolen." "Don't be so dramatic," Rowena snapped. "Elsie is being responsible with it." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat as Elsie sauntered in, cradling the violin with reckless abandon. Sure enough, there were fresh scratches and dents marring the once pristine surface. Tears of rage and heartbreak stung my eyes as I rushed over, carefully taking the instrument from her grasp. "You've damaged it," I choked out. "How could you be so careless?" Elsie merely shrugged. "It's just a silly old violin, no big deal." In that moment, I understood the depth of their disrespect and entitlement. To them, my cherished possessions and family heirlooms meant nothing. They were mere objects to be used and discarded at their convenience. As I cradled the battered violin, I knew something had to change. If they couldn't respect my boundaries or my belongings, I would find a way to make them pay, no matter what it took. Just when I thought Rowena and Elsie couldn't stoop any lower, Carter dropped a bombshell that shattered what little remained of my trust in him. We were sitting down for dinner, a rare moment of normalcy amidst the chaos, when he cleared his throat nervously. "Bryn, there's something I need to tell you." My fork hovered midair as a sense of dread washed over me. "What is it?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, you know my mom's been having some financial trouble lately." Of course I knew. Rowena's reckless spending and refusal to hold down a steady job had been a constant source of strain on the family. "Yeah, and?" I prodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "She needed to borrow some money to get back on her feet," Carter admitted. "So I lent her a pretty significant amount from our savings." The fork clattered to my plate as the words hit me like a slap across the face. "You did what?" "Now, honey, don't get upset." "Don't get upset?" I sputtered, my voice rising with each word. "Carter, that was our money. Our life savings. How could you make such a huge financial decision without even consulting me?" His shoulders sagged. I know. But she's my mother, Bryn. She was in a real bind, and I wanted to help her out." My gaze shifted to Rowena, who sat smugly sipping her wine, as if this entire situation was perfectly normal. The sheer audacity of it all made my blood boil. "Help her out?" I cried. "She's been helping herself to our finances for years. When is enough going to be enough?" Carter's brow furrowed defensively. "That's not fair. She's family, and she needed our support." "Our support?" I laughed bitterly. "Or just your blind obedience?" Elsie snickered from across the table, clearly enjoying the show. I shot her a withering glare, my rage reaching a boiling point. "Stay out of this," I snapped. "You're just as bad as she is, taking whatever you want with no regard for anyone else." Carter slammed his fist on the table, startling us all. "That's enough. I'm sick of all this fighting and negativity. My mother needed help, so I helped her. End of story." I stared at him in disbelief, searching his face for any shred of remorse or understanding, and finding none. In that moment, it became painfully clear. Carter was so deep in his family's toxic web of manipulation, he was blind to the truth. As Rowena and Elsie exchanged smug glances, reveling in their victory, something inside me shifted. The rage and resentment I'd been bottling up for weeks solidified into a cold, hard resolve. If Carter wouldn't stand up for me, for us, then I would have to take matters into my own hands. It was time to fight fire with fire. The final straw came when Elsie crossed the unforgivable line of sabotaging my career. I was deep in preparation mode for a major client presentation, the kind of job that could make or break my fledgling design business. For days, I'd been pouring every ounce of my creative energy into crafting the perfect pitch deck. The night before the big meeting, I triple-checked that all my files were in order, down to the last detail. Satisfied, I powered down my computer and tried to get some rest, my mind buzzing with anticipation. The next morning, I arrived at the client's office bright and early, laptop in hand and ready to dazzle them with my concepts. But when I pulled up the presentation, my heart dropped into my stomach. The meticulously designed slides I'd spent countless hours perfecting were gone, replaced with a garish, haphazard mess of mismatched fonts and sloppy imagery. It looked like the work of a kindergartner, not a professional graphic designer. I frantically tried to recover the original files, but it was no use. They'd been completely overwritten. As the client's team filed into the conference room, I had no choice but to barrel ahead with the travesty before me. Needless to say, the meeting was a disaster. The client was utterly unimpressed, and by the end, I could practically see the smoke billowing from their ears in frustration. When I returned home later that day, seething with humiliation and defeat, the culprit was waiting for me with a smug grin. "How'd the big presentation go?" Elsie asked innocently. I saw red. "You did this, didn't you? You messed with my files." Her grin widened. "Oh, those old things? I figured they could use a little sprucing up." The sheer audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. "You had no right. Those were my professional designs for an important client." Elsie shrugged nonchalantly. "What's the big deal? I just wanted to put my own creative spin on them." "Your spin?" I sputtered. "You completely butchered them. Do you have any idea how much time and effort went into that work?" "Yeesh, calm down," she scoffed. "It's not like I sold them off to a competitor or anything." A cold chill washed over me as the implication of her words sank in. "Wait, you didn't." The sly grin that crept across her face said it all. My heart pounded in my ears as the full weight of her betrayal hit me. "You stole my work," I whispered, horrified. "My intellectual property, and sent it to a competitor, didn't you?" Before she could respond, Winna came sauntering in, oblivious to the bombshell Elsie had just dropped. "What's all the fuss about?" "Elsie stole my designs," I cried, rounding on her. "She sabotaged my presentation and tried to pass off my work as her own." For once, Rowena's smug expression faltered, but only for a moment. "Oh, Brinley, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding." Her words trailed off as she took in the look of utter devastation on my face. In that moment, it was clear. They truly didn't care about the damage they'd caused, the boundaries they'd trampled, or the complete violation of my trust. Something inside me snapped. Tears of rage and heartbreak streamed down my cheeks as I came to a painful realization. If I wanted to reclaim my life, my business, and what little dignity I had left, there was only one path forward: revenge. In the aftermath of Elsie's unforgivable betrayal, I knew I had to take decisive action, not just for my own sake, but for my business and integrity as a professional. The next morning, I wasted no time seeking legal counsel. Intellectual property theft is a serious matter, the no-nonsense lawyer stated as she reviewed the damning evidence I'd compiled against Elsie. "We have a strong case here." Relief washed over me. "So you'll take it on? You can help me go after her?" She leveled me with a steely gaze. "I'll do everything in my power to ensure your original work is protected and that this Elsie is held accountable. But we need to move quickly before any more damage is done." I nodded, my jaw set with determination. Whatever it takes, I want to hit her where it really hurts. As the lawyer began mapping out our legal strategy, an unexpected twist emerged. In gathering proof of Elsie's actions, I uncovered a paper trail suggesting far more insidious misdeeds. "It appears your mother-in-law has been siphoning funds from your joint accounts for quite some time," the lawyer revealed, sliding a stack of incriminating bank statements across her desk. My heart pounded as I scanned the documents, seeing figure after figure that couldn't be explained away as mere loans or financial troubles. Rowena had been systematically draining our life savings for years, using my husband's blind loyalty as cover. White-hot anger coursed through my veins as the full scope of her manipulation came into focus. "That conniving, lying. Take a breath," the lawyer cautioned. "This is a positive development for our case. With this evidence, we can not only pursue Elsie for the intellectual property theft, but also go after your mother-in-law for fraud and financial exploitation." A grim satisfaction settled over me. Finally, I had the ammunition I needed to bring these two leeches to their knees and reclaim what was rightfully mine. "Do it," I said, my voice steely with resolve. "Take them for everything they've got." Over the next few weeks, the lawyer and I worked tirelessly, building an airtight case against Elsie and Rowena. Every instance of theft, deception, and violation was meticulously documented and added to the growing pile of damning evidence. As the court date loomed closer, I could practically taste the sweet vengeance that awaited them. No more being the docile victim, no more turning the other cheek. It was time to unleash the full force of karmic retribution. Carter, bless his oblivious heart, remained largely in the dark about the extent of my actions. A part of me felt a twinge of guilt for going behind his back, but his willful ignorance had enabled this toxic cycle for far too long. This was something I had to do alone. Finally, the day arrived. I strode into the courthouse, my head held high, ready to watch the house of lies Rowena and Elsie had built come crumbling down around them. As they were led into the courtroom, their expressions shifted from nonchalant to ashen-faced when they locked eyes with me, and the mountain of evidence awaiting them. I settled into my seat, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. The time for talking was over. Now, it was time for them to face the consequences. The day of reckoning finally arrived in the form of a family gathering Carter had naively organized to clear the air. Little did he know, I had something far more explosive in store. As relatives and close friends trickled into our backyard, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Rowena and Elsie huddled together, shooting me venomous looks, while Carter made awkward small talk, oblivious to the storm brewing. When the last guests had arrived, I cleared my throat and stepped forward, leveling Rowena and Elsie with an icy glare. "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," I announced, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "The theft, the lies, the utter disrespect you two have shown me and my household." Rowena scoffed. "Here we go again with the hysterics. Can't we just enjoy a nice family get-together?" "Hysterics?" I echoed with a bitter laugh. "You want to talk hysterics? How about the fact that you've been bleeding my husband dry for years to fund your sickening spending habits?" A hush fell over the crowd as I whipped out the incriminating stack of bank statements, slamming them down on the patio table with a resonant thud. "Or better yet, how about the fact that your precious daughter stole my intellectual property and tried us off my work as her own?" Elsie paled, suddenly finding great interest in studying her shoes. Rowena opened her mouth, no doubt to spew more lies and deflections, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "Save it. I have proof of every single underhanded, deceitful thing you two frauds have pulled." I turned to Carter, my heart aching at the shell-shocked expression on his face. "I'm sorry, babe, but you need to see this." One by one, I laid out the damning evidence. Bank statements, emails, contracts, everything the lawyer and I had meticulously compiled to expose their greed and treachery. With each new revelation, the murmurs and gasps from the crowd grew louder. By the time I was finished, the backyard had fallen into a stunned silence, all eyes boring into Rowena and Elsie with a mixture of shock and disgust. Carter looked like he'd been sucker-punched, his eyes glistening with unshed tears of betrayal. "Mom, Elsie, is this true? Have you really been lying and stealing from us this whole time?" For once, Rowena was at a loss for words, her mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. Elsie simply stared at the ground, shoulders slumped in shame. The silence stretched on, suffocating, until finally Carter found his voice, a raw, guttural sound that cut straight to my core. "Get out." The words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence. Rowena's head snapped up, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Carter, honey, you can't mean—" "I said get out," he roared, his face contorted with a rage I'd never witnessed. "Both of you. I don't ever want to see your faces again, after the way you've disgraced this family." As Rowena and Elsie beat a hasty retreat, their wails of protest drowned out by the din of scathing rebukes from the crowd, I let out a long, shuddering breath. It was finally over. The web of lies and manipulation had been shredded, laid bare for all to see. And in that moment, as Carter pulled me into a fierce embrace, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, free from the toxic shackles of the past. The fallout from exposing Rowena and Elsie's despicable actions was swift and uncompromising. Within days, the lawyer had them served with an ironclad legal case, leaving them with no choice but to comply. They'll be forced to repay every cent they stole, plus damages. the lawyer assured me with grim satisfaction. And Elsie will have to issue a public apology for the intellectual property theft against your company. A weight lifted off my shoulders as I realized their reign of manipulation and entitlement was truly coming to an end. Carter, newly emboldened after the shocking revelations, stood firmly by my side. "I can't believe I let them take advantage of us for so long," he said, shame and anger warring in his voice. "But not anymore. We're going to make things right." With Rowena and Elsie legally bound to make amends, a strange sense of peace washed over me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely, unburdened by their toxic presence and disrespect. In the weeks that followed, the restitution payments began trickling in, allowing Carter and I to slowly rebuild our plundered savings. And true to the court order, Elsie was forced to issue a humiliating public statement, apologizing for her unprofessional actions and acknowledging the theft of my intellectual property. As satisfying as it was to watch her swallow her pride, what mattered most was that I could finally move forward without that dark cloud hanging over my career. With Carter's renewed support, I took a deep breath and set to work realizing a long-held dream, launching my own design studio. The early days were a whirlwind of hassles and headaches, but I poured every ounce of passion into making the new venture a success, a metaphorical raised middle finger to Rowena and Elsie's attempts to derail me. As clients slowly trickled in, drawn by my talent and determination, I found myself truly thriving for the first time in years. No more walking on eggshells, no more snide comments or disrespect. This was my kingdom, my own little slice of hard-earned independence. Carter rallied behind me every step of the way, having seen firsthand the resilience and strength that guided me through our family's darkest chapter. In many ways, the experience had remolded our relationship into something deeper, more unbreakable than ever before. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured one night as we relaxed on the patio, glasses of wine in hand. "After everything you've been through, you still came out on top." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. "We came out on top, you and me, babe. We're an unstoppable team now." As the months rolled by and my studio's success continued to soar, that hard-won victory only grew sweeter. The cherry on top came when I received news that I'd been nominated for a prestigious design award, a testament to my talent and professionalism that Rowena and Elsie could never tarnish. The night of the ceremony, I walked the red carpet in a stunning gown, Carter beaming proudly by my side. And when they called my name as the winner, I gracefully accepted the award, basking in the roar of the crowd. In that shining moment of triumph, I knew one thing with crystal-clear certainty: the dark days of being trampled and disrespected were firmly behind me. This was the beginning of a new era, one of success and empowerment on my own terms. No more disturbances, only the sweet taste of victory well earned.